do you know about heroin and the effects of this drug on a person's body? You probably don't know much, and neither did I. The substances in heroin and the abuse of this drug can cause addiction, overdose, and even death, and it affects many different people. While many don't know a lot about heroin, I will help you understand the history of how this drug came about, how heroin users get started, and how this drug is taken and what happens to the user after consumption. Many people understand that heroin is not good for the body, but people aren't quite aware about what is in heroin and where it comes from. Heroin comes from an Asian poppy plant that has opium in it. This drug came about in the 1800s from a British chemist who worked for Bayer. It was originally used as a painkiller, but people soon discovered how bad the drug really was and made it illegal in most areas. Middle Eastern, Mexican, and Southeast Asian countries are where most heroin is made. Myanmar, Afghanistan, and Laos is leading producers of heroin. For the most part, pure heroin occurs in a white powder that tastes bitter, and it can be mixed with several different substances to be used for this drug. According to the article, Heroin Affects Addiction and Treatment Options, most illicit heroin is sold as a white or brownish powder that is usually cut with other drugs or with substances such as sugar, starch, powdered milk, or quinine. Now that you're aware of what is in heroin and where it comes from, let's talk about how users get started taking this drug. Abusers of heroin sometimes start their drug addiction through prescription drugs such as Vicodin and OxyContin. Vicodin has acetaminophen and hydrocodone in it. It was originally used as a medicine to relieve pain. OxyContin helps to treat pain that is supposed to last longer than expected, and it should not be used for normal aches and pains. These can only be purchased through pharmacies with a prescription from a doctor. Both drugs have opium in them, making them gateways to using heroin. While there are drugs that help people get to heroin, not many people are aware of what actually happens after consuming the drug. This deadly drug can be taken several different ways, and it has several different effects on the body. Some effects might be good and pleasant to users when they first take heroin, but the effects definitely end up being bad and can really harm the user's body. Heroin can be snorted, smoked, or injected. Users of heroin usually inject it because they experience a better rush. There are some short-term effects of using heroin. After the rush wears off, users experience a time of relaxation. Once the heroin wears off, the users feel mentally unstable and has a clouded consciousness. Few users might not react positively to heroin, and they might go into a state of nausea or depression. Encyclopedia Britannica says heroin is a highly addictive drug, and an addict must usually inject heroin about twice a day in order to avoid the discomfort or withdrawal symptoms. These include restlessness, body aches and pains, insomnia, nausea, vomiting, and diarrhea. As heroin can have different effects on different people, in the end, people don't want to deal with how their body reacts after it's consumed. Therefore, it is easily addicted. Throughout this speech, I mentioned the history of heroin, how users get started, and what happens when taking heroin. The substances in heroin and the abuse of this drug can cause addiction, overdose, and even death, and it affects many different people. I hope now, when I ask, how much do you know about heroin and the effects it has on a body, you are aware of the deadly drug, heroin, and what it can do.